G'day, Harry Houdini here in Australia, and look, I am starting something new. It's a bit watery. Yes, we're finally getting a start on the Arizona. We're only 3 weeks into the group build. Oh look, it's about 8 months, so you know, missed a bit. But we've of course been busy with the Skyhawk, and we've been busy with that Skoda, which is coming along nicely. The Skyhawk's nearly finished. There'll be a video up about that later in the week. But let me tell you a bit about this this Arizona. Now I've done a few videos on it so far, and I've defended the kit, and overall I think the kit has a lot of merit and it's not too bad. But I've got my extra strong reading glasses out this time, and I've actually got in to try and start putting those first few hull pieces together, because I want to put a veneer deck on this. Okay, and I'll go through that and show you how I do that. Now, it's sort of chicken and egg sort of stuff. What comes first? Alright, so the deck, to get the deck on, you've got to have, or get the veneer deck on, you've got to have a flush deck. And this comes in a series of very strange segmented pieces. Okay, so there we go. I've wrapped it. Let's do a close-up and I'll show you what the issues are. I remarked about this when I did the review, that there's already a couple of deck pieces and they're fitted in, and the hull halves, they're already joined as well. So that seemed like a good idea for some rigidity, which is always an issue when you're putting together, you know, a large scale battleship, is you really want to make sure everything's going to be very, you know, rigid and strong. And the trumpeter kit I had got around this because they had a plate that went along the bottom, and that kept the hull sides nice and firm, and then you could put a little bit of bracing underneath your deck, and on it goes. Anyhow, deck pieces. Let's have a look here. Bow. Right. Now, the bow has this little piece that goes in here. Now, that took a lot of filing to fit. A lot of filing. I can see why a lot of people get a little bit upset with this kit. The fit is not good. Is not good at all. Now, if you weren't putting a wood veneer deck on, you're struggling with a major issue here. Now, let me show you. Oh, beauty. It's only dry fit. Okay. Now, here's where you're going to put your front deck. Now, bloody thing won't cooperate. There's a wobbly. There we go. Clickety click, click, click. Anyhow, here's our piece of deck that's going to go on there, wood, right? Now, that's going to hide some issues, because if you didn't have a veneer deck, you've got this join here, and you've got this join here, and that has been a major complaint from a lot of modelers about these joins. And they are a bit woeful, and they don't line up very well. They're quite difficult. So if you didn't have something to cover them, like this veneer, then you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have to do a lot of filling, then you're going to have to rescore all those planks, and I would advise that, really. For the few extra shekels for a wood veneer deck, that's how you want to go. All right. So that's what we're doing, and I knew that from the start, right? But there's more problems. These little edges here. What do you call them? Cuddles? No, don't know. I've forgotten my nautical terms. I was a bloody Sea Scout. Did you know that? I was a Sea Scout in South Africa. Yes, I went there because I was a Boy Scout in Australia. We went across to South Africa, which is kind of where I was born. Well, I wasn't born in South Africa. I was born in the middle of Africa. That's another story. I've really travelled quite a lot. Anyhow, in one of our many journeys around, we went from Western Australia back to South Africa where my father was born, and I had been a Boy Scout in Western Australia, and quite good, but they sort of didn't really fit well, I didn't fit in that well with the Boy Scouts in South Africa. It was a bit difficult. Anyhow, we were sort of living in Cape Town at the time, I think, and I went to the Sea Scouts. That was a lot of fun. And I'd even thought of joining the Navy at one stage. So you'd think I know things, but that was a long time. We're talking half a century ago. So Harry Houdini's memory is not that good. Anyhow, I digress. There's little bumpy bits around here, which your deck railings are going to sit on. Now they're supposed to be slightly proud, and they are most of the way. Certainly where it's been fixed, where the deck is moulded in, there is a little lip, and you won't really see it. I don't think in the video, but it's there. There's a tiny little lip, and that's good. That's quite good, and that's the easy bit. And then you go to put in your front piece. Well, to start with, there was. Look at that. Doesn't fit. You know why it doesn't fit? Got it again bloody upside down, haven't I? Oh goodness me. To start with, there was quite a lot of flash. Now I didn't think it was flash when I first looked at it. It was hard to know. You're looking at lots of things, but there was a little raised area along here that was obviously a piece of flash because it wasn't the width of this little deck edge, and it sort of flopped around. When you look side on, you could see it was like a little flashy piece. So that had to be sanded off on both sides. That's okay. I got that off, but once that was sanded off, and you could actually see the two whole pieces together. I don't know if you can see it, but at the front here, I'll show a photo later, there was a massive, and there still is a massive discrepancy in height between the hull halves. I mean, if I'd glued two hull halves together, I couldn't have done a worse job of aligning them. Anyhow, with a bit of sanding at the front here to reduce basically what is the port side, the starboard side is still far too low. And in fact, the best I can get it is about 0.5 millimetre difference. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember, this is 1/350th scale, so 0.5 mil is about 178 mils in real scale, which is over 6 inches. It's more like 7 inches, actually 7 or 8 inches. That's a lot. That's this much. It is. It's a size bigger than a foot. Well, not bigger than a foot. Small foot. My size foot. I only got little feet. So yeah, that's going to require a serious amount of filling. I may have to actually glue some styrene in there, and then sand around that, and then get Mr. Surfacer in there and do quite a bit of work. So that's going to slow me down, because I was hoping tonight to be able to get the deck pieces in. I was thinking it was like my trumpeter kit. I remember when I first opened my trumpeter box, I basically worked out all the deck pieces, and I could actually assemble the deck pieces separate to the hull, and I put all my veneer straight on those deck pieces well before it even touched the hull. So I was able to dry fit everything and see how it goes. But no, with this one, because of this sort of weirdness here, I'm going to have to cement in these deck pieces. They're going to have to be fitted first before I can even think about putting my veneer on. And they will have to be filled and sanded, and there's quite a bit of work that's going to go into that. So I'm not going to get that done this video, I'm going to tell you. Well, unless I have a little break in the middle of it. And what you've also got to do is, before you can put your veneer on, you're going to have to make sure all the little parts that are going to be exposed through that veneer, all the little surfaces, they're going to have to be painted. Now, one of the things I'm going to have to do is remove things that are not required or that I've got replacements for. So these chains on here, they're all going to have to be scraped off. A series of these little parts are all going to have to be sanded down a little bit, because I've got photo-etch to replace all that. There's a considerable amount that Edward gives you, and this is just for the bow. You can see the red bits there, they've already been cut and removed, and there's quite a bit of stuff that has to be adjusted and sanded, so that the when the deck goes on, the veneer deck goes on, these little photo-etchy parts can fit in. And that's okay, I'm planning ahead with that. I'd already looked at my my instructions from Hobby Boss here, and I had already planned ahead and realised things that needed doing. So I've started making some notes already about what I will need to do, what sections in the photo etch I'll have to reference straight away. And Edward is fairly good in that their instructions mirror the build, the same order of the build. So first thing I need to do is the front bow deck, and that's the first thing in photo-etch in Edward and the first thing in Hobart. So that makes it fairly easy, whereas I've had other things like Pontos and I've had KA, both decking and PE, and they didn't really follow any kind of thing that you could fathom. You really had to figure it all out for yourself. But luckily Edward does make that easy for me, and some of the things like doing the turrets is going to be pretty well straightforward. I just follow the bouncing ball there. But back to my deck. So I've got quite a lot to do, Now, also, and I knew this, these two pieces of deck, and this is a hangover from copying the Revell for something or other scale kit. See these two pieces of deck join together, and then you get this god-awful sort of fit for portholes, and if you had to actually do that, it would be an almighty filler affair and you would probably lose a lot of hair over it. But I won't be doing that because Edward is going to give me replacements. In fact, Edward gives me a whole lot of direction here on the deck saying remove, remove, remove. All these little bits that are in beige, remove, 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 remove. And so they all get taken out, and then later on in the instructions, can I find it? Later on you'll find, like here, there's a whole lot of photo-etch parts that go in and replace, and the beauty is they won't have a big horrible joint in the middle. They're a single piece. They'll go in, they'll replace all that, and they'll fix all those worries and those woes, and that's excellent, you know. That's good. No, and I knew that would be solved because I knew that was an issue, and that will be solved with the Edward photo-etch, so that's good. So really, that's okay, and this is a big job. We're not going to get this done in a month or 2 months. I'm going to need the full length of the group build or the buddy build, and the 8 months. And I've already wasted 3 dillying around with other things. Nearly said dicking. Oops. Oh dear. All right. So I have got quite a bit to do here before I can even contemplate putting on this deck. And one of the other things that has got to slow me down is the colour of this ship. Now, a lot of people just paint it grey, you know. Battleships are grey, that's great. But there is quite a lot of evidence and quite a strong school of thought that it's actually sort of a bluey colour. Can you see that there? It's more blue than it is grey. And I have, this is Humbrol colour 77, I think. It says 15 and 14. Yeah, anyway, it's a Humbrol 77. There it is over there. Humbrol 77. Now, it's very hard to match that in anyone else's paint, and I've bought a whole lot of Vallejo and Ammo MIG acrylic because I'm really enjoying using those with the airbrush now. And being acrylic, I'm not really using any horrible thinners, and it's a lot nicer to use, and then having a lot of fun on the Skoda, just using acrylic paint and airbrushing it on. Anyhow, I've deliberated on this blue a lot, and I've tried to order colours that would match, and I've thought and I've looked and looked. I'm going for a compromise. I will go this hue, this bluey grey hue, but this is just far too dark for me, or far too intense, and I've decided to shade it down a bit. So I'm sort of mixing a Harry Houdini custom colour that will retain the blueness, which I believe is historically accurate, but for the sake of scale and looking more like something that I'll enjoy, it's going to be greyed a little. More of that later when we come to it. But I needed to have that colour worked out because when this deck goes on, I'll need to have this hull painted. Otherwise, I'm going to have a huge masking job later on of trying to mask around everything, and you know, and the last thing I need is any paint on this lovely wood veneer. Now, when I did the trumpeter, I could paint the hull, I could paint all the little pieces on the deck, and I could put the veneer on and assemble it, and this was all very easy, and I had a wonderful rollicking time. But with this Arizona, I have to think ahead a lot, and I have to do a lot of planning because I don't have that luxury. and I'm going to have to really get this fitting perfectly. So I better get on with that and stop waffling along here, and probably I'll come back next time, because it's going to take me quite some time before I get all the filling and sanding, and I'm going to have to raise that bow quite a bit. Well, 1/2 mil doesn't sound like a lot, but it will be, for me to put a little bit of thin styrene on there and glue it in, and then have to sand that all back and then get in with Mr. Surfacer and remove all the irregularities. But I need to get that bow right. It's important. Bow of the ship's very important, don't you think? I think. So this is where I am at with the Arizona. And it's just a dry fit, and it's been a lot of fiddling tonight, and that's all I've got done. But that's okay. Now, one other thing that I noticed, and if you're building this kit you've got to watch out for, is these portholes. Now, when I reviewed it, I went, terrific, these portholes are all drilled out. That's, you know, and they are pretty well, they're nicely deep, and it looked like you didn't have to do too much work to them. Yeah, that's probably true to a point, but I found a number of these portholes, they were drilled out, but there was like a big pushed out crater, like an explosion, you know, like on the moon where there's a crater but there's big ridges all around the outside. Well, they had those, and I cannot for any way, you know, any rhyme or reason I can fathom, think that actually necessarily needs to be there. It's nothing that I know of that exists on ships, and I haven't seen it before. I mean, sometimes you get a little raised part on the top of a porthole, and that's quite normal, and I think Edward even might supply some things in the kit for putting around portholes. But certainly them sticking out like big pimply type craters, no, that's not right. And it wasn't even consistent for either hull half. So it required quite a bit of filing and sanding along all the portholes just to tidy them up. And they're probably all got bits of filler in, or not filler, but a bit of sanded plastic in there at the moment. So that was something that I wasn't expecting, and that was just a little bit disappointing. So far the hull is misaligned, doesn't have the correct raised edges, the deck parts don't fit, and the portholes are kind of wobbly. Oh well. Look, I knew it was cheap, and I knew there would be a bit of work to do, but I'm getting there, and that's okay. I'll fiddle and I'll faff with that, and I'm sure I'll sort it all out. The wood veneer deck, once that's on, I think I'll forget all the trials and tribulations, and it'll start to look really good, especially when I get my nice bluey grey coat of colour on there. So there you go. That's the start of the Arizona. Now, I'm not entirely disappointed. I just know that you know, it's a kit with issues, but they are all solvable. So that's what I'll show you. I'll show you warts and all. I'm not going to pretend. I'll show you the bad stuff, and then I'll show you how, hopefully, I get through and I solve all the issues. Alrighty? Well, that's enough for this time, isn't it? Not that I got much done. All I did was dry fit a few things and do a lot of whinging. But that's all you get, really. I mean, battleships are going to take a while. There's going to be more than a couple of parts to this. Anyhow, that's it. That's all I've got time for. So it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.